All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Taylor. Welcome to our audience here on Zoom and on Facebook. I'm Liz Perry, the president of Crow Canyon Archaeological Center. This is our Thursday webinar series, and we are excited to host the Four Corners Lecture Series again this Thursday, which is a joint presentation with Mesa Verde National Park. Before I introduce our speakers, I would just like to begin as we typically do, with our land acknowledgement. Crow Canyon Archaeological Center acknowledges the Pueblo, Ute, Paiute, Diné, and Hickory Apache people on whose traditional homelands our institution sits and where we work and reside. Our mission-related work is not possible without Indigenous people in the past, present, and future. And at Crow Canyon, we respectfully recognize and honor ancestral and descendant Indigenous communities for their contributions to all humankind. We are grateful to all Indigenous people and support the preservation and protection of cultural traditions, ancestral connections, and sacred lands. This is absolutely critical to our mission at Crow Canyon to empower present and future generations by making the human past accessible and relevant through archaeological research, experiential education, and American Indian knowledge. Please do check us out at our website at crowcanyon.org. And a huge thank you to all of you who have joined us today and in the past for supporting our webinar series. We are so grateful to all of you who donate to the series, who sometimes donate every time that you register. It makes a huge difference. We are entirely supported by these contributions, and we are so grateful for your loyalty and support. A couple of the usual Zoom conferencing recommendations. Actually, you are not going to need to move the talking heads today because we will be looking at the interview here with two of our folks from Mesa Verde National Park, but there will be a Q&A period. So please do ask questions using the Q&A function. If you can remember, sometimes if the chat gets busy, we miss some of the questions in the chat, but if you put them in the Q&A, we will be sure to see them and try to get to all of our questions. If you're on Zoom and you have some technical challenges, we are live streaming on Facebook, and you can go to our Facebook page, and this lecture will be available after the fact on YouTube. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. I check every month to see how many new subscriptions we have to YouTube, and it is really great for our mission and our ability to reach people. The more people sign up for our YouTube channel. We have some fantastic webinars coming up the next 2 weeks. We have Context and Resiliency, Native American Horse Relations with Dr. Kayci Dale John next Thursday, September 1st. Following that, we have Indigenous Knowledge, Shifting Narrative, Enhancing Documentation, and Changing Policy in Museum Collections with Brian Bio from the Pueblo of Acoma. We are incredibly honored to have both of these speakers talking about very critical issues for our Indigenous partners and descendant communities. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our talk today from the Four Corners Lecture Series and Mesa Verde National Park, Past Meets Present, a conversation between two Mesa Verde superintendents. I want to tell you a little bit about each of our speakers today. Kayci Cook Collins became superintendent of Mesa Verde National Park and Yucca House Monument in 2021, last year, about a year ago. But this year marks 40 years since she first began working for the National Park Service. And this is incredibly interesting and powerful. She is the fourth generation of her family to work for the National Park Service. Her grandfather, Meredith Gillette, was Mesa Verde superintendent from 1966 to 1972, and Kayci enjoyed many childhood visits here. Previously, she had been superintendent of the Flagstaff Area National Monuments, all of them, Walnut Canyon, Wapatki, Sunset Crater in northern Arizona, and El Malpais and El Morro National Monuments in New Mexico. She has also worked at Glen Canyon National Recreation Area, Death Valley National Park, Canyon de Chelly National Monument, and several other NPS areas, as well as the headquarters in Washington, D.C. We are so lucky to have you here in our region at Mesa Verde, Kayci. She is joined today by Joe Sindelar, who is a lifelong educator with a career in elementary and middle school teaching that spanned 4 decades. During the summers of 1979 and 1980, he was a seasonal interpretive ranger and became hooked on Mesa Verde, as so many people do. After retiring from teaching, Joe returned to the park as a seasonal interpreter for 7 of the last 10 years. And during this time, he researched the life and accomplishments of Jesse Nusbaum, the superintendent who saved and guided the park through the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. He then created, Joe, not Jesse Nusbaum, created a living history presentation acting as Jesse Nusbaum that he used on tours of Cliff Palace, the Historic District, and presented entertaining campfire programs at the Moorfield Campground. So you will know what to expect, Joe Sindelar will be joining us in character as Jesse Nusbaum for his interview today with current Superintendent Kayci Cook Collins. Joe is currently a volunteer guide for school groups at History Colorado in Denver, and he specializes in the Mesa Verde exhibit. Thank you so much for both of you joining us. And I am going to turn it over now to Kayci Cook Collins for her interview with her guest today, her special guest.
Oh my goodness, you're former Superintendent Jesse Nusbaum.
Quite right.
Oh my goodness, I'm Kayci Cook Collins. I'm the current superintendent for Mesa Verde National Park. So I want to welcome you and of course wish you happy Founders Day.
Oh, well, thank you so much. It's such an honor, using magic from above, to be brought down here on Founders Day to the place that, oh, my heart belongs to share stories.
Oh, that's absolutely what I was hoping for. So I'm really excited to be able to hear about your time as superintendent here. 3 times you were superintendent here.
3 different times.
And also share with you a little bit about my experiences so far sitting in your chair.
I'll look forward to hearing that. And may I add, I am very pleased and pleasantly surprised that there is now a woman superintendent in Mesa Verde.
Oh. Thank
Bravo.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I have to tell you, I've been walking around all day with a list of questions because I was hoping that the magic of Founders Day might drop you from the sky, and looks like that has happened. So I guess the first question I need to ask you is, may I call you Jesse?
You certainly may. May I call you Kayci?
Absolutely, because
All right.
I feel like we've known each other forever. So the first question that I want to talk to you about is actually how you came to be superintendent at Mesa Verde National Park. Will you talk a little bit about that?
I'll be glad to. And you know what? I had no inkling I'd ever be a superintendent of any park. Mainly because when I was in high school, college, a young adult, there was no such thing as the National Park Service. But 2 events in my life, 2 interventions of fate is what got me here. I was very interested in photography and archaeology through the Gustav Norgren School books. When I was in high school, continued that in college, graduated in 1907, was ready to go down to New Mexico to teach at their college when something happened, an event. Out of the blue, a gentleman named Edgar Hewitt, he was a rising star in Southwest archaeology, and he contacted the dean of my school and college in Greeley and said, I need a strong and agile young man interested in archaeology and skilled in photography. Bingo. That's what got me here. There were 2 great summers. I got to explore everything, work with Alfred Kidder and Sylvanus Morley, who became famous archaeologists on their own.
I know those names.
And we checked out every single nook and cranny, photographed anything we could get to, kept records of everything. And at that point, I was hooked on archaeology and also fell in love with Mesa Verde. I decided someday I want to live there year long. Now, after I left here, I went down to Santa Fe to get official training in archaeology. But during that time, I was hired 2 different times. One was to actually stabilize and repair a balcony house here in the park, and then went back and then was hired for the restoration of the famous Palace of the Governors right there on the square.
Right, and that many times.
And the skills I got there were so valuable. I left Santa Fe, went to the Mayan ruins area for almost 3 years, explored again everything, photographed, found new techniques of archaeology, and that helped my background. Came back to the United States just as America was joining World War I, and I was determined to be a pilot. I wanted to be the guy who shot down that Red Baron fellow that was causing so much trouble. But when I went to enlist, I was rejected. Eyeglasses, yes. But instead, I went into the Corps of Engineers and ended up working on rebuilding roads and bridges and other stone buildings there. Super valuable later when I came here. And I finished the war, went to New York, when I met my wonderful wife. We were married, Aileen, and her stepson, her son, Derek, my stepson. And then we became a family and thought that was going to be how life went. And then another event happened that changed everything. Well, I got a phone call from this fellow named Stephen Mather. He was the director of the new organization, yes. And he said, Nusbaum, I heard a lot of good things about you. And as I look at your resume, I think you're the exact person for this job. We have a park out west that is so poorly run and mismanaged, I'm actually afraid it might fail. It's called Mesa Verde. Would you be willing to take that on? And I said, yes, I will. And that's what got me into Mesa Verde.
Wow, well, my path here was not nearly as circuitous as yours. No, you know, as you might know, I have a family member that was in the Park Service, more than one. But Meredith Gillette, my maternal grandfather, was superintendent here between 1966 and 1972. But he came here first in 1930 as a seasonal, and then he worked in the Civilian Conservation Corps camps.
I remember him. He was a fine young man and a very hard worker.
I thought you might. So beyond that, you know, I'm a fourth generation Park Service employee. So, you know, what else was I going to do with my life? Everybody in my family does this family business. So I have a great grandfather, two grandfathers, and a father who all had long federal careers with the National Park Service. But the point that I want to make here is that they did not do it alone. Each one of them had a wife who is basically served as an unpaid, sometimes unrecognized partner as superintendent's wife. You do all sorts of things. And so it's a debt of gratitude that I feel like I should pay to both my grandmothers and my mother, as well as to your wife, Aileen, because she, I'm sure, was a full partner in what you did.
Oh, I could not have succeeded here without her support and her ideas and her work.
There we go. So I'm the first woman in my family to have a career with the Park Service. But you know, now even superintendents, women superintendents are pretty common in the Park Service. Rocky Mountain National Park and Yosemite National Park both have women as current superintendents. There have been two directors of the National Park Service who were women. And our current Secretary of the Interior is a woman and is from Laguna Pueblo, one of the communities, one of the descendant communities from Mesa Verde National Park. Isn't that exciting?
Well, bravo to them and to you. It's long overdue.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So I've organized the questions for you around the segments of the mission of the National Park Service, since that's what we're celebrating today. So the first set of questions are organized around the visitor experience and enjoyment of the parks. So, so every superintendent spends a lot of time dealing with facilities, both the kind that support visitors when they're visiting the parks, but also those that support staff, you know, things like offices and employee housing. So where we're sitting is on the porch of one of your beautiful stone buildings, right, which now serves as the Chief Ranger's office. And we've got Spruce Tree House in the background here. So I wondered if you might tell us a little bit about how these stone buildings came to be.
Well, let me describe first off what it looked like when I arrived in May of 1921. Up here on the top, all you had were tents, lean-tos, a few roughly made shacks, and a few very nice log cabins, and a whole lot of horse poop because the stables are right by here.
Yeah.
Anyway, I took one quick look and looked, this would not do for a first-class national park. And my wife and I got to work on that immediately. We studied the buildings down below, came up with an architectural technique that became known as modified Southwest Pueblo revival style. And I have to chuckle a bit. I got a lot of credit in Chief for thinking that up. We just copied what they had done and modernized it a bit.
Beautiful work.
So I'm going to tell you about a few of the buildings. The first is the superintendent's house. Now that is the first permanent stone building built in this location since the 1270s.
Wow.
So we took it very seriously, picked out a beautiful cliff top
Mhm.
looking into the canyon, started working on it. There were other people to help with that, but we worked ourselves and got about 2/3 of the way done by Christmas time. And decided, let's spend Christmas there anyway.
Oh,
Put big
wow.
tarps to block off the unfinished part.
Right.
Got a tree decorated, made wreaths, had a turkey dinner, presents sent up from Mancos. And I have to tell you, Kayci, in my entire life, that was the most special Christmas.
I
of all
bet.
time. Now they finished the building by March, and we moved in very happy. But the problem arose that we had no inkling was going to
What
happen.
was that?
At that time, when a visitor came to a national park, he or she could see anything they wanted to. And guess what? Our house was more popular than the
Oh,
cliff
no,
dwellings.
You're kidding.
So many a morning in my robe and a cup of coffee, there was a knock on the door. Hello, superintendent, can we see your house? Oh my gosh, it was very irritating. And I gotta tell you, it's not a recipe for a happy marriage either. It took about 2 years of letters to Director Mather to him to finally say, superintendent's house is their castle, nobody can go into it.
Oh,
Thank
goodness.
goodness. Now there's a little building behind it. It's a post office now, very cute, still in action. Do you know what that was
I
before
do.
though?
It was the women's comfort station.
Oh, exactly, the women's comfort station. One day Elaine took me aside and said, Jesse, you're not gonna get ladies up here to enjoy these cliff dwellings if they have to use a latrine like the men.
Oh, yeah.
We ladies have a much higher level of expectation and value on such matters. To which I replied, yes, dear.
Smart man.
And, yeah, and there, 5 weeks later, that was going. And then also, there's a lot of houses you might see, the stone houses built for the rangers and their families, especially when we started getting rangers with families.
Mhm.
I knew they needed a solid and comfortable place to live up here. So we built 8 or 9 of those, and that made them very happy.
Oh, that's fantastic. So I have my own memories of the
Oh, yeah.
superintendent's house, of course, when Grandma and Grandpa lived there.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
so we would come up from Canyon de Chelly for every Thanksgiving. So I remember many Thanksgiving dinners there. One of the park employees, his daughter was married on the superintendent's lawn. So there was a wedding one
Oh, how
summer, which is
nice.
beautiful.
Yes.
And then my little friend, Maria Elena Waite, whose parents both worked for the park here, she and I would run around the stone house loop chasing wild turkeys and deer.
Oh
I
my
know, we
goodness, she
probably
would have gotten in
aren't
trouble for
supposed
that
to
when
be
I was
doing that,
super.
but you know, it was pretty fun. So
Yeah,
about the stone houses, we're about to engage in a big renovation project to fix those back up again. Only a couple of them are being lived in now because the others have seen some rough times. I know it's not your fault, but you didn't exactly put those on fancy foundations when you
No,
constructed
we were in a
them,
bit of a
Jesse.
hurry.
I understand that. So anyway, we're going to spend about $7 million to fix those up,
Unbelievable.
and they will be
7
absolutely
million.
beautiful, and I'm sure employees will be very excited to
Oh,
live
that
in
is
those
so good to
again. That's
hear.
going to be great. But you know, it's more than just love that motivates us to take care of those buildings. There are actually laws that make us do it, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
So the National Historic Preservation Act was passed in 1966, and that is one of the laws that has us take good care of historic structures that are over 50 years old.
Oh.
And in that way, they're almost in the same category as places like Spruce Tree House and the other archaeological sites for which Mesa Verde National Park was established.
I had no idea that was going to happen.
I know.
I'm very happy they're still standing and being used.
And they
That's
are.
good to know.
So I would imagine in the park's early years, you probably spent a lot of time on things like improving roads and securing drinking water. Is that
Oh
right?
my goodness, yes. Those roads and water were the 2 big challenges I faced all during my 17 years in 3 different stints here. First off, the roads were not marked well. They weren't taken care of well. They were mainly dirt. So when you want rain in the summer to prevent forest fires, you don't want it for the roads. Some
Makes it
muddy
sloppy.
messes. And that the famous knife edge
Oh,
road was the
gosh.
bane of everybody who came in
Sure.
here and went out. So we had to work on those constantly, grading, putting up signs, just doing a much better job there.
Mhm.
And then water. You may not believe this. When I arrived as superintendent, the water for the employees and the visitors in the park was actually pumped out of this exact same spring that the residents of Spruce Tree House had used
Oh my
700
gosh.
years earlier. But I knew that was not going to be enough. So we started designing some cisterns to capture rainwater, filter it, and also built some reservoirs around to hold, not huge ones, but enough to hold the water and all that. But still, that was a major problem. And all through my time here.
Well, guess what? Some things don't
Uh-oh.
change.
Oh,
Those are
no.
some of the major things that I find myself working on here too. So we don't use Spruce Tree House Spring anymore for our water source. And obviously
good.
the cisterns and things that you put in place are not sufficient for what we use now. Our water comes from the headwaters of the Magus River. So it comes from a long way off.
Yes.
So we get it to the bottom of the park, then we have to get it up on top of the mesa. And then there are a series of water lines that pipe it to the various places that we need to have water. Well, water lines have to be replaced from time to time. So we have a project that we're going to start next year, quite a pricey one, that will be replacing the water lines going into the Moorfield Campground, and then also the lines that go all the way out to Wetherill Mesa to serve the visitor area out there. Well, guess what? Those out to Wetherill Mesa, the water line is under the road.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That makes it complicated.
It is complicated. However, this is where, changing technology is a boon to park managers now. We may be looking at doing directional drilling. The contractors that are going to work on this might be able to go underground and emplace the new pipe without having a surface excavations throughout the whole distance of the roads. Yeah.
That would be a good idea.
Well, roads, speaking of roads, when you beam down, you might have noticed a lot of construction equipment
I
on the
certainly
Mesa
did,
Top Loop.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. So we have a great big federal highways paving project going on because, as you know, we have to frequently refresh, care for, and then periodically refresh the asphalt that the visitors travel on. So that's a big project that's been going on for about the last year. But on the Mesa Top Loop, I'm excited because it will include portions of it will include a bike lane.
Oh,
so visitors will have a chance to get out of their cars,
exciting.
get some exercise, and access some of the beautiful parts of Mesa Verde on the bicycle.
I'll have to bring my bike the next time.
You should.
I have a question for you. I
Sure.
bet these are quite pricey.
Projects.
Projects.
My gosh, they are. I think the road project is about $8.5 million.
Oh, my goodness.
And the water line project, I believe, is over $20 million. So
Oh.
you're right.
I brought that up because in my entire 17 years here, we barely broke $1 million grand total for the budgets back then.
My
So
goodness.
this is mind-boggling.
My goodness. Well, we've done well at getting project money, that's for sure. So I want to talk a little bit about visitors and their experiences back in your day and now. So I went and I looked up the annual visitation numbers during your 3 terms as superintendent. So during your 1920 stint, the annual visitor numbers went from 3,000 to 18,000. And then in your 1930 stint, they went from 25,000 to 32,000. And then in your 1940 stint, they were at about 40,000. So I wondered if you had any reflections on how and why the numbers went up the way they did.
Well, our intention was to get more and more people interested to come see. So I was expecting it to grow. But I have to tell you, actually, there are a few factors that probably kept it lower than I was hoping for. One was the poor quality of the roads, and I'm not talking about the park itself, the entire states around you.
Oh,
It
sure.
was very hard to get here from any like Denver, Salt Lake City, Albuquerque, any of the big population centers. And also, of course, the Great Depression happened, which probably dampened some people's ability to travel. And then with World War II, we were good at the beginning and the end, but in the middle, there were several years where there was gas rationing. So it was very hard to get here. So other than that, it probably would have been higher. But I got to tell you, my last few months here, my desk was covered with letters from all over the country, from returning soldiers, and sailors, and airmen, and the factory workers and their families. And I read a bunch of them. There was a single theme.
What was that?
That was, we survived the Great Depression. We sacrificed, struggled, won World War II.
Right.
Now we want to get away from it all. We want to explore the country. So my last official memo in early 1946, going to the bosses in Washington, said, gentlemen, the national parks better be ready because America is coming.
Wow, and that's exactly what happened. So visitation just continued to go up and up. So when my grandfather was here in the 1960s, he experienced a range of visitation of 420,000 in 1966, which is way more than you ever saw.
Oh, yeah.
And then his final year, 1972, it was at 546,000. So, so
More
that's
than
quite a
half a
bit.
million.
I know,
Our
that's true.
roads and water, we've never been able to take care of.
Well,
that.
you know, what's interesting is that just last year in 2021, we had almost exactly the same annual visitation number that Grandpa did his final year
Oh,
here.
that's strange.
Yeah, well, you know, here's one of the things I think is at work there. So now there are 423 units of the national park system.
That
Lots,
many?
right,
Oh
right,
my
and
goodness.
they're everywhere. They are throughout the continental United States. They're in Hawaii. There's one in Guam, Puerto Rico. I think
Oh.
part of what's at work here is that there are so many opportunities for visitors to explore their national parks that it's not just a few places that are
Mhm.
drawing all the visitation.
Oh, that's
So I
good to
find
know
that
they're
kind of
being
curious.
enjoyed so much.
Exactly. So continuing on the topic of visitor experience, we're right next to where we're sitting is the Chapin Mesa Archaeological
right over
Museum.
there.
That's one of your buildings. So I wanted to ask you how that museum came to be.
Well, again, when I first arrived, there was a museum set up by Jesse Walter Fuchs, the
Right.
famous archaeologist,
Mhm.
but it was a log building, not too big, and only had 5 cases of exhibits in it. So I knew, again, right away, we needed a much larger building, more elaborate and more professional looking. So we made plans for that, started working on it, and needed money. Luckily, a donor, a wonderful lady, Miss Levittson
Mhm.
from San Francisco, gave us a huge donation to get it started. But I have to tell you, I had to sweet talk her a bit. She had plans for her money to be building an archway over the entrance of the
Oh,
park.
like the one at the entrance to Yellowstone.
Yeah,
National
the
Park.
Teddy Roosevelt one. But I talked her out of it, knowing that we needed the museum more than that. So,
Good job.
but then there were a few problems you'll hear about later.
All right. Well, you know, the Chapin Mesa Museum is still there.
Good, good.
It is, however, the exhibit area of it's closed for
Mhm.
some renovations, but also we're working on brand new exhibits. We're
Oh,
so excited
so
about
good.
this. Yeah. So we are working with the traditionally associated tribes and pueblos on this exhibit plan because we want to be able to incorporate their views about Mesa Verde's
Mhm.
cultural history from their perspectives, which of course wasn't generally done.
No, that
in
wasn't
the
how we did
past.
things in the 20s. I'm glad to
Exactly.
hear that.
So we have a native interpretation work group that is endorsed by the consulting tribes that we work with, and that group is helping to advise us so we can get the
Very, very
stories
good.
right from the indigenous perspective, which is really important.
Bravo.
And beyond that, we're doing a new film for the park. And the working group is also advising us on that too. So it's all about trying to dispel the lingering misconception that the people who built the cliff dwellings just up and disappeared at the year 1300. Of course, we know that's not true, that they're
Definitely
still
not true.
around. So
Yeah.
the tribes are wanting to express that they're still very much here. The tribes and pueblos, they're here. They're still very much connected to Mesa Verde National Park as a homeland.
Oh, I applaud that.
Yeah, it's
totally.
exciting. Well, something you might have seen when you came in is a new visitor center that's down near the park entrance. Did you notice
I
that?
think I noticed it. I
Okay,
wasn't
so-
sure what it was.
Yeah, it's the Visitor and Research Center, and it was finished in 2012.
Very recent.
You know, and it's got the classic things that a visitor center would have, but it has something that's quite spectacular, and that is a large space for our 3 million item museum collection.
Oh, 3 million
State-of-the-art,
items?
yes, including
Wow.
archives. So one of my favorite things about the Visitor and Research Center regarding the collection storage area is that in the lobby of the Visitor Center, there's a window that visitors can look through and they can see into the collection storage facility to open shelving filled with beautiful ceramics and other objects
Goodness.
from Mesa Verde. I bet you would recognize a lot of them.
I know, and that's come a long way since the Fuchs cabin.
No
Museum.
kidding. That's
Oh.
so true. So, you know, obviously museums and visitor centers are important ways to help visitors understand and appreciate what's important about the park. But I think the highlight for many visitors is going on ranger talks, tours, and programs. So I wondered if you could say a little bit about what used to be done during your time here.
Well, guess what? This was an unholy mess when I arrived.
Oh.
It was being run as a family business by the superintendent. His son-in-law, Fred Jeep, was the chief ranger, and he hired some of his friends, no experience at all from Mancos. They would show people around when they felt like it, and then go back after hours and dig up pottery and other things
wow.
to sell. It's the exact opposite of what should be going on. And another generation down, the grandson of the superintendent, I don't even remember that young hellion's name, but he and a few of his friends would hide out in the trees next to the road. And as a visitor car went by, they'd pop out, jump up on the running board and say, "Hey, mister, got a buck? I'll show you where the ruins are."
Oh, my goodness.
So that was the guided tours back in 1921. I only put up with that for a year, got rid of the whole lot of them, and started hiring well-educated, professional young people. They all had to be men at the time, sorry, but that was in the 20s, who had archaeological backgrounds, either in college or actual jobs. They did a marvelous job. We organized caravans of vehicles that go to the sites, the tours through them, and pointing out everything you can learn from here. And also we kept going kept the campfire programs going,
Right.
which began here in this very
That's
park
right.
with Jesse.
Started the
Nusbaum.
tradition for the park.
So I love the idea. We kept it going, and people enjoyed those and learned a lot from them too.
Well, you will be glad to know that we continue with many of the same kinds of programs that were done during your time. So you set a good example
Okay.
for us. We have, and we also follow the example of hiring highly skilled interpretive rangers that come
Very
with
good.
great science backgrounds and communication backgrounds, and they lead tours to many of the same places that I'm sure the folks did during your time. So some things we just carry on because they're great
I
ideas.
hope that always goes on that way.
But I want to tell you something new that the Park Service has done over about the
Okay.
last decade or so, which I think you'll be really excited about. It's called the Junior Ranger Program.
Oh, really?
And so we do it in Mesa Verde National Park, and it happens in a lot of other places. And this is an opportunity for children, young people, to learn about the park through a series of activities. And then when they complete that, they are given a junior ranger badge and sworn in as a junior park ranger. So
Very
the
good,
reason
very
that I wanted to bring this up to you is that your stepson Derek, I think, would have absolutely loved the junior ranger
Oh,
program.
you would have, I know.
I know that with the help of his mom, he wrote a book when you all lived
What
here.
it was like to live in a national park.
Exactly. And so, I sort of feel like Derek might have been the original junior ranger of Mesa Verde National Park. And so I wondered if, when you go back up, if you would give this to him on our behalf.
Oh, I'll be happy to. He'll be so proud. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, about visitor safety, I want to talk briefly about that. I would imagine that visitors occasionally got injured or ill during their visits to Mesa Verde. What sort of services were you all able to provide back in those days?
Oh, yes, they did. We had lots of scrapes, cuts, insect bites, heat stroke, a broken bone now and then. But I have to tell you, my wife, Aileen, once again came to the rescue. She was a nurse in World War I, realized that being so far up here with such poor roads was just asking for trouble when people got injured. So she, on her own, lobbied the Surgeon General and members of Congress to have a hospital funded and built here. It was wonderful. It had 6 beds, an operating room, and the office. And I'll tell you, talk about coincidence. We had a visitor in 1931 who had an acute appendicitis attack, could be fatal.
Oh, wow.
That very day, the Secretary of the Interior was here, and he was a retired surgeon.
Oh my gosh.
And he operated on that person and saved their lives. Talk about,
Wow.
good fortune. Now, the Congress even allowed or named the hospital after Aileen, the Aileen Nusbaum Hospital. I was so proud. I still am so proud of her, so happy for her. I got to tell you, I'm a little envious. Nothing in this park's named after me, but.
Well, we speak your name positively all the time, Jesse, so don't worry about
good.
that.
Thank
So I do need to tell you, the hospital no longer serves as a hospital.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is now part of our concession operations food service. And what we've done, to take care of injured visitors, we have taken our emergency medical services on the road. So our law enforcement rangers are all qualified as emergency medical technicians. I don't think that was a thing when you were
No, it was
around.
not.
So when somebody is injured, an employee, hopefully not, a visitor, hopefully not also, but we dispatch our law enforcement rangers out to where the incident is. and the folks are
Ah.
taken care of there.
It's so good to
The
hear.
park does have an ambulance, and so if we need to transport somebody down to more sophisticated medical treatment, we can do that. But that's sort of what the way we're dealing with that particular aspect of visitor
Okay.
use.
Yes.
So at this point, I want to transition to a different set of questions. I want to talk about the other aspect of the mission of the Park Service, preserving and protecting resources for current and future generations, because of course we can only have enjoyment of them if we have taken good care
Oh,
of
for
the
sure.
reasons for which the parks were established in the first place, which of course at Mesa Verde National Park is the cliff dwellings and the other archaeological sites. So my next question to you is to ask you to tell me a little bit about the work that you did related to the park's amazing archaeological sites.
Well, remember, I was first here in 1907, 1908, when Jesse Walter Fuchs from the
That's right.
Smithsonian was here with crews, and he set the standard. They worked on Spruce Tree one year, Cliff House the next. He decided not to try to rebuild them, but instead to stabilize, number one, stabilize and repair what was still standing. Number two, clean out the rubble.
Right.
And number three, make it presentable to the public to learn from. And those standards still exist in the Park Service today. I know I follow those for anything I get here, except I have to admit, working on Balcony House, there was a fourth goal that was to keep it from sliding off the cliff.
Right.
So we tried everything, but had to settle on some metal supports, angle irons, tie rods, which are still there today, but it's kept it in place. Also, I got to go out in the winter and do excavations, a lot of the earlier time periods, pit houses and surface dwellings. We worked on those a lot. And one of the big benefits was hiring a lot of Navajo workers.
Mm-hmm.
They were excellent. It's not their culture, but they totally respected it and were excellent stonemasons, making mortar, putting the things together, making sure that the visitor would be safe. We couldn't have done in the 20s what we did without their help. And they continued helping way past and being part of the
That's right,
staff
they
way
did.
past after I left.
Well, as with other things, we've carried on a lot of the groundbreaking traditions that you established for professional work in archaeology too. I want to play a little guessing game with you though. So how many documented archaeological sites do you think there are at Mesa Verde
In
National
the whole
Park?
park,
Yeah.
I would guess several hundred.
Oh my goodness, you are way low. So we
Oh,
have
wow.
well over 4,000 documented
4,000.
archaeological and cultural sites here, of which 600 are the cliff dwellings. So we have a big job in terms of
Yes.
taking care of those. We have a professional staff, we have archaeologists, and we have professional preservation specialists that do everything from documenting and doing condition assessments for these archaeological sites, and then doing stabilization treatments in order to keep them around for a good long time. And there are times when we too augment our staff with other crews. We have the last number of years been beneficiaries of the Ancestral Lands Corps, groups from Zuni Pueblo and other places where young indigenous people come and they get to work on ancestral homelands and help us with the preservation mission of the Park Service. So those are all really exciting things that we do. And going back to the National Historic Preservation Act, it's not very haphazard what we do. It's all very prescribed. It all has to be done and documented. I think in some ways the documentation might be even more important than what we do to the actual, because that's, you have to leave a record for the next people that inherit the care of these archaeological sites. But of course, Mesa Verde is about more than just archaeological sites. We have amazing scenery and we have natural resources too, things like wildlife and vegetation. So I just wondered if you had any experiences with regard to those kinds of resources that you'd want to share.
Well, when I arrived, there were actually prospectors wandering around in here. That was allowed for some reason, looking for some kind of valuable metals. They did find some coal, but thank goodness not enough to make it profitable, so they left that alone.
Yeah.
But when it comes to wildlife, the big wildlife I dealt with at the beginning were cows, cattle everywhere. That previous superintendent allowed his friends to graze their cattle up here during the summer. And what they didn't eat, they trampled, including the road and surface sites. That was a major problem. I finally worked out deals with the cattlemen, and we cut back 20% a year. So it took 5 or 6 years for them to be out of here. But it was like, and they tried to come back in World War II because of the meat share. But I was ahead of the game on that one.
Strong on that.
Now with regular flora and fauna, to be honest, I didn't really do much with them. They sort of took care of themselves. I was so focused on enhancing the visitor experience and preserving the dwellings. So.
Well, you know, in modern times, we still have issues with trespass and feral livestock, horses and cattle, but we're working on that.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have a plan to remove the feral trespass horses from Mesa Verde National Park. Yeah, we have about 75 of them, and we're going to use a low stress capture method. We're going to capture one band at a time, and then with a partner, the National Mustang Association, we're planning on working with them such that the animals could be adopted out, as many of them as possible, and new homes given to them. And then for the cattle, we have a partnership with the Ute Mountain Ute tribe. They'll be working with us to get the cattle. There are about 40 of those, I think, that we'll be removing from the park, and then tightening up the fences so we don't end up with a bunch of animals right back here. So
I'll be interested to see how that turns out.
Well, I'll let you know. You'll have to come back and visit again. You know, in terms of water as a resource, you know, there's a reach of the Mancos River that flows through Mesa Verde National Park. Yes, yeah, that's right. And we have a project that's going to happen fairly soon where we will be doing riparian restoration in kind of an interesting way. We are going to be constructing for all the world what are fake beaver dams.
Really?
Yes, analog beaver dams in order to slow the water down as it comes down the river.
Reminiscent of the check dams.
That's right.
Ancestral Pueblo people built for farming.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Oh,
so those
goodness.
are a couple of examples of the way we're taking care of our natural resources. So the next thing I want to ask you about is partners. We all know that the National Park Service cannot and should not be doing its job all by itself. That it takes partners to be successful in meeting the mission of the Park Service. So so the first question I want to ask you about is philanthropy. The Park Service has a long history of philanthropy supporting what we do, and I just wonder if you were able to attract philanthropists to the park during your time.
Oh, I certainly was, and it was totally necessary. Back then, Congress didn't function all that well, and a lot of arguments, name calling, and they were very tight with the purse strings. So I already mentioned the lady from San Francisco, Ms. Levis, and she got us going, but we ran out of money, and the museum was only about half done as that example. But I heard John D. Rockefeller Jr. was bringing his family on a tour of the Southwest, and he wanted to see our park. So we'll be ready for him. And when they arrived, oh my, we treated them like royalty. Wined them, dined them, had steak fries, which I think you folks today call barbecues, right? Aileen put on several pageants down in Spruce Tree House. We showed him everything we possibly could.
Wow.
He was so impressed that he wrote a check for $5,000 before they left. Oh, it certainly was. And that allowed us to finish the museum. And we continued the relationship for the next 5 years. He sent $1,000 a year so that I could do with a crew excavations in the winter to get artifacts to put in that museum. And $1,000 was a lot of money back then. So I'm in totally gratitude of him. And he helped a lot of other parks too, Grand Teton, Smokies, Williamsburg, that kind of thing. But America needs more people like that.
Well, you will be happy to know that the Rockefeller family is still helping to take care of Mesa Verde National Park.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yes. So David Rockefeller is involved through our Mesa Verde Foundation, but also directly with the park, and has donated funding for conservation projects, but also actually donated items that relate to the family trip that John D. Rockefeller took back in your day when he ended up visiting with you here. So we still have just a wonderful connection there. We do have two great nonprofit partners, the Mesa Verde Foundation I mentioned. They've done amazing things too. In fact, they came up with funding to purchase the land on which the Visitor and Research Center was constructed.
Oh, that's helpful.
Yeah. So there's that, and they've also brought in grants for things like the park film that we're working on, and other resource and education activities as well. Then we've got the Mesa Verde the Mesa Verde Association, I should say. That's our cooperating association. They sell interpretive and educational materials in the Visitor and Research Center and up at the Chapin Mesa Museum. And they have their sales are so good, I should say, that just in 2022, they've been able to provide us with over $100,000 in direct park aid to support things like cultural demonstrations and other educational interpretive programs and some resource things too. So we are just blessed with, wonderful
That's
partners.
valuable beyond words.
It truly is. You know, other partners that we have include commercial ones, the concessioners. You know, there are services that visitors expect when they come to a national park that's not appropriate for the Park Service to provide. So I wonder if you had any anecdotes about concession operations during your time.
Well, once again, we're back to the unholy mess at the beginning. When I arrived, again, the park was being run as a family business. So we had Fred Jeep, the son-in-law of the superintendent, doing the ranger part, but his daughter Odie was doing the concession part. They were totally intertwined. I realized quickly that is not going to work. That is not going to be to the benefit of the visitor.
Right.
So we got rid of Fred of that, but Odie stayed on, a couple rough years dealing with her. But then you know what? Then she really got on board and did a very good job as a concession. It set this a bit of a standard, and that tradition was passed on to quite a few companies and people since that time.
That's right. And so we have Aramark destinations. Aramark Destinations, I got to get it right. They just had a little name change, but they're our concession operation now, and they operate the lodge at Farview. They have several food service operations. They run the campground and store at the Moorfield campground. They conduct tours beyond those that our staff do. So they're a really good partner too in providing things that are important that visitors expect here.
Good to hear that too. My goodness.
Yeah. So the last category of partners that I want to bring up are the tribes and pueblos. So I wonder about the indigenous communities nearby and what your relationship with them was.
All right. Well, I had much success with the Navajo, as I already mentioned that, and with the Pueblo descendants, good relations there. But the one single big regret I have is dealing with our Ute neighbors, the Ute Mountain Utes and the Southern Utes. That just did not turn out well, and I feel bad about it. You know, in life, you only have one chance to make a first impression. Their impression on me were that they were pests, basically, poaching, trespassing, cutting wood, etc. And I didn't want to put up with that at all. And their impression of me was that I was very uncaring, disrespectful, and not interested at all. Oh, if there's something I could change, it would be that. And I should have been tuned into the fact that these wonderful Ute people have been shoved out, literally physically, out of the beautiful mountains of Colorado, stuck down here on the southern border, and then had the parkland taken away from them.
Right.
And I wasn't tuned into that, and I'm very sorry. If there's something I can change in my superintendency here, that would be it.
Well, you know, my grandfather also worked with the Ute people, and he was superintendent here. In fact, he was sent here specifically to try to work on the relationship between the Ute Mountain Ute tribe and the Park Service. And what he said was that he felt like he did a pretty good job of that. One of the things that he worked on was helping the tribe stand up the Ute Tribal Park, so that they can have the opportunity to host visitors to see the cliff dwellings and the cultural resources.
That's at the other end of the actual Mesa.
Yes,
oh,
exactly,
excellent.
Exactly. So currently, you know, the way Mesa Verde National Park and all national parks work is that we consult with tribes that are associated with the resources and lands in our parks. And we have 26 tribes that we consult with. Yes, right. So, you know, all of the Pueblos in New Mexico, the Navajo Nation, 2 different Apache tribes, the Ute tribes. It's quite a large number. And, you know, it's important that we do that because the federal land management agencies, we're making decisions about projects and operations that could have an impact on things that are very important to these people because we're operating in their homelands. So it might sound kind of complicated, but you know, it's some of the most rewarding work that the staff gets to do here because we get to both receive information about the park's resources and we get to share things too. So that perspective is really, really
It's
critical for us.
It's excellent to hear that. I'm so happy. I'm also so glad that relations are better with the youths and that your grandfather played a major part in that. So
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jesse. So you and I have shared a whole bunch of challenges during our times as superintendent, but I bet I have a challenge that you didn't have to deal with at all, that you probably wouldn't even recognize.
what's that?
Climate change.
Oh, yes, I don't know what that is.
Well, the world is heating up. There's human-caused climate change. Our industrial and other activities have warmed the planet, and there are global consequences all over the world and consequences to the national park. So, for example, this warming is causing the loss of glaciers in Glacier National Park. The rise in sea level from melting polar ice caps is starting to inundate resources in coastal national parks like lighthouses and beaches and things like that. Yeah, it is. And so that's something that modern superintendents, not just at Mesa Verde, but all over the national park system are having to deal with. And there at Mesa Verde, there are a few places where it's particularly scary. You know, we're in the middle of a mega drought. It's been very dry here. And global climate change is causing more severe storms to happen with more frequency. We have longer, you know how it's windy in the spring here?
Yes.
Well, the winds seem to last longer in the spring, which just furthers the drying. Yeah, so these are all things that have us very worried, and they have real impacts on the cultural and natural resources here. So, for example, our cultural resources in terms of stronger, more severe storms might have erosion to the mesa top sites that we have. There could be loss of mortar, more water dripping into the cliff dwellings.
Foundations.
Yeah, exactly. That's absolutely right. So, you know, we've got things like that going on. And then in terms of the natural resources, we're seeing the loss of springs. You know, we're having some springs that are drying up.
They're so crucial. There weren't all that many to start with.
That's true. And the water table in some places is dropping. So some places that you would have recognized as wet meadows really aren't that wet anymore.
It's so sad.
But the biggest, I think, threat that's coming about due to climate change is the increase in number and severity of wildfires. Right. So some statistics for you. In the last century, Mesa Verde National Park, 70% of it has
70%?
Yes, 70% in a century has burned. And then just in the last 30 years, 50% of that has happened. So you can see there's an acceleration in wildland fires.
I love this place so much. This is heartbreaking.
I know. And a couple of examples. So the Bircher fire in 2000 was over 22,000 acres.
That's almost half the park.
Exactly. And then the Long Mesa fire 2 years later in 2002 burned areas around Chapin Mesa, and actually right behind us here you can see the impacts of that in the area above Spruce Treehouse. So these are things that have us very worried, and it makes fire management really important aspect of what we do. So we're working on a new fire management plan for Mesa Verde National Park that will help us deal with the burnable vegetation and try to make sure that the rest of the park is not so impacted as what's happened here.
Those numbers are just mind-boggling and terrifying.
They really are. So Jesse, I'm sensing that our time together is just about over. And there have been a lot of changes since your time here, but the 1916 mission of the National Park Service has been kind of a beacon that I think has kept many generations really focused on what's really important, and that is preserving and keeping for future generations the important resources of Mesa Verde National Park. So I wanted to ask if you had any parting thoughts for me on the value of Mesa Verde in the national parks.
Well, yes, I have two. One will refer to this park in particular and all the Southwest archaeological parks. And I hope that people know that please respect and honor these ancient cultures and their descendants for what they endured, for what they accomplished, and for the lessons that they have left for us, which from your description probably are more pertinent than ever. And the other thing is all the parks. They are a gift. So everyone, love them, learn from them, explore them, enjoy them. but most important of all, protect and take care of them. Never, ever, ever let anybody try to take them away from you. Our country needs our national parks. They're our nation's heart and soul.
Oh,
Please remember that.
that is so well put, Jesse. The only thing that I would add is that Mesa Verde National Park is now important to more than just our citizens in our country.
Ah,
It is a World Heritage Site. It was
Oh,
designated so
that's
in
good to hear.
1978 by the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. So that's something that you probably hadn't even heard of.
no.
There's one more international designation that we've picked up, and that was just last year. So Mesa Verde is now an international dark sky park,
Right.
which recognizes that it is a superb place to enjoy the night sky.
Some of my best memories are looking at the Milky Way and
There you go.
stars here.
There you
Well, that's
go.
great to hear.
So to close out our conversation, Jesse, I want to thank you for the long and illustrious Park Service career that you had. Your work truly embodied the mission of the National Park Service. And so I wondered if you might do me the honor of reciting the best part of the Organic Act along with me.
I'd be happy to.
All right. So the National Park Service is to conserve the scenery and the natural and historic objects and the wildlife therein in such manner and by such means as will
to
leave them unimpaired
unimpaired
for the benefit and enjoyment of future generations.
Yes.
So thank
Very
you,
well.
Jesse, so much
Oh, you're
for
so welcome.
coming
It's a
down to
pleasure.
visit me.
Glad. I'm happy to be here.
And I have one request, and that is, if you see Stephen Mather or Horace Albright, the first and second directors of the Park Service, when you go back up, would you put in a good word for maybe one of them to come down and visit with us next Founder's Day?
Well, believe it or not, we get together every Friday morning for donuts and coffee. So I can take care of that right away tomorrow morning.
Perfect, perfect.
All right.
Thank you, and safe travels back up.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Oh, fantastic presentation. Presentation about preservation. Thank you so much.
There you go.
We've got some spectacular comments coming in with praise and loving the concept and the involvement of Jesse. It looks like we have a few minutes for some questions that have come in. One that is addressed to both of you has to do with challenges that our participant maybe thinks both of you have faced and wants to know, how did each of you in your respective administrations deal with forest fires in the park?
Should I go first?
Yeah,
on that?
absolutely.
Well,
Age before beauty.
Thank you. Believe it or not, there weren't that many while I was here. There was a large one that was about 3,000 acres. But something that I've learned from watching from above is we did not look forward to removing undergrowth and stuff, let fuels build up.
Right, you didn't manage
Nobody
the fuels.
thought about it. And I understand that created a big problem in your time period
It
here.
did. It did. So, luckily for me, during my 1 year here, I think the biggest fire that we've popped at Mesa Verde has only been 22 acres. But, one of the things that's helpful is that because fire has become such a big deal in the West and Southwest, we have a fire crew. We have a fire management officer that's part of our staff. We have a fire crew. We actually have a hell attack crew, and we have a contract helicopter that can also respond to fires, not just in our park, but in other places too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we have an interesting question from one of our participants. It says, Mr. Nusbaum, I know that you're familiar with the ranger, Joe Sindelar, who portrays you in presentations in the park. We're curious about Joe and wonder if you can speculate about the ways that the culture of the Native Americans who dwelled there and the experience as a ranger have changed Joe's life.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Catch me off guard with that. Anyway, I first came here, Joe Sindelar, in 1974. I was just captured by the place and tried desperately to become a seasonal. It took to 79. And I don't know what to tell you. For me, this was being a seasonal was not a job. it was a calling, it was a passion. And I just feel every cell in my body wants to tell the story of these ancient people. And again, what they endured, what they accomplished. And so that's been a joy there. And I don't know much else what to add to that.
That sounds perfect. That sounds wonderful. Thank you for that breaking the fourth wall experience there. We had a question that came in on Facebook about, and I believe this is for our current superintendent. How has the impact of climate change affected the preservation of archaeological remains, and how are you thinking about coping with it?
Well, I addressed that a little bit. You know, we're having to look at more frequent treatments of archaeological sites, and you know, to some degree it's changing the materials that we use. You know, we might use amended mortars more frequently than unamended mortars when we conduct stabilization activities. You know, and just the need to monitor more frequently, because we're having more impacts more frequently with the accelerated change in storms and patterns of weather. So those are some of those things that we're doing.
Fantastic. Well, we're right about at 5 o'clock and want to be respectful of everyone's time. Are there any parting comments that either of you would like to make as we wrap up?
Well, to reiterate, protect the parks, everybody. Don't let anybody try to take them away or privatize them, okay?
And I would just like to thank Joe for this great opportunity. This has been really fun for us. I think both of us have enjoyed it. I also like to thank Jill Blumenthal on the park staff. It was her idea to put the current and a long past superintendent together to have a conversation. And she provided us with a couple of ideas and then let us run with it. So I'd like to thank her. But then beyond that, what I really want to do, because today is the 106th anniversary of creation of the National Park Service, is to thank all National Park Service employees and volunteers and partners, past and present, for everything that they've done to keep and hold Mesa Verde National Park and all of the other national parks in our country, because as Joe said, they are our heart and soul. So thank you for the opportunity to talk about this on a very special day for us.
Thank you so much. That's just been spectacular. Thank you, Kayci and Joe. And Grow Canyon is so grateful for all of our partnerships with Mesa Verde National Park in the past, and we are so excited for your anniversary year. Okay, thank you everyone, and hopefully we will see you all next Thursday.